Want to expand the reach of your content? Start a podcast. Feature industry experts on your show and leverage the influence and reach of your guests to grow your brand. Learn more at sweetfishmedia.com.
You're listening to B2B Growth, a daily podcast for B2B leaders. We've interviewed names you've probably heard before, like Gary Vaynerchuk and Simon Sinek, but you've probably never heard from the majority of our guests. That's because the bulk of our interviews aren't with professional speakers and authors. Most of our guests are in the trenches leading sales and marketing teams. They're implementing strategy. They're experimenting with tactics. They're building the fastest growing B2B companies in the world. My name is James Carberry. I'm the founder of Sweetfish Media, a podcast agency for B2B brands, and I'm also one of the co-hosts of this show. When we're not interviewing sales and marketing leaders, you'll hear stories from behind the scenes of our own business. We'll share the ups and downs of our journey as we attempt to take over the world. Just kidding. Well, maybe. Let's get into the show.
Hey everyone, before we get into this episode, I wanted to give a shout out to today's sponsor, Mailtag.io. Mailtag is a Chrome browser extension for Gmail that allows you to track and schedule your emails as well as create pings. Super useful automated follow-up sequences. It's a really helpful tool that I highly recommend if you're in sales because you can get real-time alerts about your email opens and link clicks right on your desktop, as well as access a powerful dashboard for even more insights. For more info, be sure to check out mailtag.io or just use the link in the show notes. All right, let's get into the episode. Welcome back to the B2B Growth Show. I'm Logan Lyles, Director of Partnerships here at Sweetfish Media. Today is a very special episode. We are introducing a new B2B Growth co-host. I am joined today by Miles Veth. He is the CEO of Veth Group. Miles, how you doing today, man?
I'm doing well. Thank you very much for having me, Logan.
Awesome. Well, we are going to get into kind of your story, how you got connected with James and the team here at Sweetfish. But before we do that, man, tell our listeners a little bit about yourself, what you and the team at Veth Group are up to, man.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. So I am from a family of entrepreneurs. I grew up in the IT industry, sitting on data center floors on Christmas morning and cold calling in a closet when I was in college. And my dad I give him a hard time for that. And I, out of college, went to work at a company called EMC that was acquired by Dell in sales and loved that. And then I really wanted to get back into the entrepreneurial side of things. So I came back and worked with my dad. And then within our family business hood, have pivoted out to starting a company that specializes in cracking new opportunities for people. So I'm really enjoying it.
Awesome. I love it, man. Well, it is great to chat with you here on the podcast. I know you and I have been connected on LinkedIn for a bit. James has talked about you. I know you guys have been in similar circles for a while. You touched a little bit on what you guys do at Veth Group, and we're going to break down some strategies for folks to give some value to our listeners, in addition to introducing a great new co-host in you, Miles. What was this video I saw the other day I saw a lightsaber flashing around in some video you posted on LinkedIn, man.
Yeah, so one of my new favorite toys are these metal sparring lightsabers. So one of the things that we do, essentially what we do for people is we run demand generation tests at the onset. So either outbound, such as cold calling, direct mail, email marketing, or inbound, which is a little bit of a longer test, but building audiences and personal brands on LinkedIn or Facebook or some of these modern digital platforms. And we're always trying to learn, how can we control message and how do we make the message resonate? And how can we control medium? And one of my favorite things to accompany a message with right now is, lightsabers. So I'm glad you got to see that.
Awesome, man. Well, give us a little bit of background on how you got connected with James and what really kind of drove you to want to be involved in collaborating with us here on the show and becoming one of the co-hosts of B2B Growth, man.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. So I got to know James when I was a senior in college, I think 3 years ago. It's gone fast. And I was just so impressed by his generosity. So as someone who's a Christian in business, that's something that is really important to me. And I think with James, I just saw this huge heart to help two college students, me and one of my friends, with no expectation of getting anything in return, just teaching us marketing. And I've really appreciated getting to know him. And in the time since I first met him, obviously his business has completely taken off with Sweetfish. And I'm just a big believer in podcasting. And I think we're just, the way we consume information is going to continue to become simpler. And I think voice is going to be that. And I think for us at Veth Group, we dabble in a lot of areas in terms of trying to set up these tests. But the best production partner I've ever seen for podcasting is definitely Sweetfish. And I'm so excited to get to be collaborating with your team and getting to know this community.
Yeah, man. Excited to have you on board as a co-host. And I've talked about it here in some of our behind the curtains episodes with James, talking about my story. Very similar, man. I reached out to him at one point, going down kind of a different entrepreneurial path, and just reached out to him as someone who seemed like had some wisdom to share. And he carved 30 minutes out of his day to offer some advice and allow me to use him as a sounding board with no expectation in return. Very, very, very similar situation, man. And that sparked a friendship, which led to me coming on board with Sweetfish. And great to hear that our network is growing and we're bringing in great people like you to collaborate with on the show. So let's transition into some things that I know you wanted to share with listeners today, Miles. As we talked about, you help folks test what's going to work in their demand gen strategies based on their business model, based on their market, looking at outbound, non-traditional outbound, like sending lightsabers to people, inbound and branding. So I know you mentioned there are kind of 3 areas to look at in determining what's going to be the best fit for you. The first is taking a look at your market. What are some of the variables people should be looking at when figuring out what is going to be the most effective demand gen strategy for my business?
Yeah, that is an excellent question, Logan. And I think the biggest thing that I've learned, I view it with the humility that marketing and demand generation are not easy. And no matter how much you do this, nobody is an expert on it. And there's never enough context to make a perfect decision. So I think testing is often failing until you find the right thing. And just being comfortable with that is probably, I think, at the onset, the biggest thing I've learned. But in terms of assessing a market, I think the hardest thing to do for entrepreneurs or even just company sales leaders is to really assess if you're bringing something unique to the market as a product. And I think I've seen a lot of clients and just people in the ecosystem in general bring something unique to the market. And that has just completely taken off these campaigns. So you can call 1,000 times for one person and not get any opportunities. And you can call 30 times for a different person and get 5 opportunities, even if their deal size, call it roughly the same. And when you start to see that, you start to learn that product market fit is really a driver of whether or not the success you're going to have on any of these channels. And I think within that, I think about outbound, everybody loves because it's immediately qualified. Because if I'm calling you saying, Logan, I'd love to sell you this widget. Do you have a need? If you're saying yes, then the hope is that you're somewhat qualified. But not all of us have the luxury in these saturated markets, such as, where you came from in copiers or, traditional IT services or some of these things that it can be very difficult to stand out. And I think that's what you guys are doing at Sweetfish is innovative because it's learning how do you build human to human connections around ideas and relationships that can turn into business naturally, but don't start with a business justification because I don't think in this commodity space, there's not always a justification that's going to be that logical.
Right. Looking at product market fit, looking at how saturated is the market, how mature is the market that you're dealing with. I've seen a drastic difference in 10 years of selling copiers where, you're replacing a commodity. And, my differentiator was always kind of knowing the technology and being able to show that to folks. Whereas now, at our agency at Sweetfish, there are a lot of folks who are looking to get into podcasting and it's new. So that's poses a little bit of a different challenge because not necessarily replacing something they already have, but helping them get over the hump of, hey, we should be doing a podcast or we want to, but we don't know how to yet, or these things are holding us back. So there's different variables, that and nuances to the should you do outbound, should you do inbound, that you need to put some context on the debate, right? Like nothing is dead. It's just what's going to be effective in your space. The other point I know you mentioned as we were talking offline is thinking about your business model. What's your time to close? Tell us a little bit about some of the things here in your business model and timing people should be thinking about when it comes to which demand gen strategy should they lean into the most.
Yeah, I think it's a great question, Logan, because some of us in sales have deal sizes of $500,000 gross profit. And those deals might take 2 years, but they're very large. And some of us are selling transactional things where we might make $100 a month per customer, and it should be a very short sales cycle. And I think learning to understand when patience matters and when owning a relationship in an account matters and when you should just be trying to glean for who's buying right now, and understanding the math of that deal size versus if you start mailing things like sparring lightsabers, people are going to respond. But if I'm a windshield repair company, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense for me to lightsaber everybody in the town because I'd run out of money.
Mhm.
So I think for us, it's learning inbound demand is always better. I know I have a client, billions of dollars software company. I want to say 80 to 90% of the business that's closing in terms of net new is inbound.
Mhm.
So you're like outbound versus inbound. It's going to be so much easier if they're coming to you, they know your brand.
Mhm.
And when you look at just how they're perceiving you, your deals are going to close faster. You're going to be able to price higher. You're going to have less competition. So I always encourage people, if you have more than, a 6 to 8 month time horizon and you're not completely on fire to have to make something happen from a revenue perspective right away, really focus a lot on building that inbound channel. And I think that's something that James, your guys' founder, has done an incredible job of just put out, great content, build a podcast, get it up to 75,000 people downloading it. And when that happens, rather than you having to go out and ask all 75,000 people, do you want a podcast today? The 1% that want it today come to you. And the difference in that is mind-boggling to me, how powerful that channel is compared to a channel where I'm having to mine through and annoy the 75,000.
Yeah. I love that, man. Well, the last piece I know you wanted to talk about, Miles. So we've talked about thinking about your market, taking a look at your business model. And then the third piece, I know you're pretty passionate about. People really get hung up on the tools once they decide, okay, I'm going all in on outbound, or we're using these non-traditional outbound methodologies, like coming up with really creative ways and touch points to reach out to new prospects. And then they get hung up on the tools that they need to make them successful. Tell us a little bit about your perspective there with all of the testing you've been doing and what you're hearing from sales leaders and folks you're working with.
Yeah. So I think that's a great point, Logan, is that I put my cell phone on LinkedIn. So I'm sure someone will probably see my cell phone's 203-641-3940. Anyone who wants to text me a question, I will answer like 24 hours a day. And when I think about that, I get a lot of people who are hung up on what should they use as a CRM, what should they use as a power dialer, what should the list building technology company be. And what I've learned is those are not the differentiator. So people see what I'm doing because I put up a video earlier this year where I made 681 cold calls in one day.
Yeah, I saw that. That was amazing.
Yeah, and that was our business, Veth Group, and the channel I most believe in is LinkedIn. That's where we grow our business. Like Veth Group does not go cold to the market, even though we provide that as a service for people. So I don't think about like 700 cold calls. I don't know if that's practical, but just in terms of wanting to show that people who are debating and should I pay $75 a month for this or $100 a month for that? They're making 87 dials with their power dialer. Just get a desk phone, print out the numbers, cross them out with a pencil. You can make 700. And I think for me, I've just learned a lot of that. Same thing in the list space. Everyone's oohing and eyeing at this technology because people are using these huge buzzwords like artificial intelligence. Like the way all of these companies work, there's two types of list builders. You have discover.org. Discover.org is hand-to-hand combat, human beings going out and getting data. It's very high-quality data. It's very expensive. On the other side, you have people who are using scraping tools who are going out to any time that you, Logan, have used your Sweetfish email to put it into a lead form and scraping that data. So they can scrape your email, they can scrape the number you put in. And so that's being pitched as your cell phone or your direct dial, which again, that could be your great aunt who's passed away 20 years ago's home phone number. Like you're not obligated to put in your direct cell phone number.
Right.
So I think a lot of people are so hung up on these technologies. And I think the margin, it just doesn't make sense. So what I would suggest to anybody really simply would just be like, go out to LinkedIn Sales Navigator, $80 a month. You got to buy that one, sadly. Go to Upwork. There's a lot of great people. I can recommend them to you if you need them. There's great people at $4 an hour who already have Sales Navigator accounts, and they can scrape a big list for you together. And then from there, so you're talking, 3,000 names for $200. then put that into hunter.io. Hunter.io is going to give you all of the emails. Go back to the same outsourcer, ask them to Google those companies to get phone number and mailing address. And you're building these lists, and at the scale, it's the same thing. And once I have that list, everyone wants to ooh and ah, LinkedIn Helper and all these tools. The way to win is one by one by one, building a relationship and serving them. And there's no way to scale that. I mean, it's things like giving out your cell phone number and figuring out what matters to them. And I think that's the biggest safety for good sales reps against AI. But I just think as an ecosystem, one of the things I'm passionate about is we need to start prioritizing character qualities like honesty and integrity and kindness, and stop prioritizing that some tool is all of a sudden going to get you 10x your number. Because I will take anyone on a power dialer any day by hand. That's my story.
I love it. I knew you had some passion to share there, and you touched on a point, that you mentioned earlier is you've got to think about your market as you do, a lot of volume, high volume outbound for your clients. That's not necessarily the fit for Veth Group. And so folks saying you've got to have this tool or you've got to use this strategy are missing the context that people really need to determine the demand gen strategy that's going to be effective for them. So I really like what you're saying there. And it is also why, what you guys do is so valuable right now to help people develop a methodology for testing the things that are going to work for them. Because as we've been talking about, there are a lot of variables, there are a lot of contextual elements that change what's going to be effective for you. And those things might change over time as well. So I really appreciate you coming on as a co-host of the show here shortly, man, and sharing some practical value with the listeners today. So everybody listening to this, Miles Veth will be a new co-host of B2B Growth. Not exactly sure the timing of when you'll hear him interviewing a new guest, but that will be coming shortly. So you can expect to hear Miles on the show here. You've heard his cell phone number right here in the episode. Miles, if anybody listening to this would like to connect with you or reach out, what's any other better way to do that? I normally ask that question, but you've already preempted it with giving out your cell phone mid-episode, man.
Yeah, no, I'm a huge believer in serving and unconditionally serving with no expectation of return. I think that, like I mentioned, faith has a lot to do with that for me. So anything I can do for you, that cell phone number is all yours to hit up as much as you need to. And if you're a sales rep, all I will say is we have a little bit of a high bar because we do this all day and we get a lot of no's. So we don't feel too bad about saying no. So if you're a sales rep, maybe be a little more creative. But anyone, if I can serve you in any way, just please let me know.
Absolutely. All right, Miles, this has been fantastic. Look forward to having you as a co-host on the show. Thank you so much for making time to do this introduction today, man.
No, my pleasure. Looking forward to working together.
Digital marketing agencies have a tough job. You have to stay on top of the latest marketing strategies for your clients and your agency. What if there was a way you could address both at the same time? Imagine your agency putting out content with greater quality and quantity. Envision bringing your clients a turnkey solution for one of B2B marketing's fastest growing media strategies, podcasting. All those clients asking for your help with their account-based marketing efforts? Picture being the first to bring them the idea of content-based networking, showing them the proven strategy for breaking into their most coveted accounts. Here's the concept. Sweetfish Media is looking to work with a limited number of innovative agencies interested in a new partnership model. We produce a podcast for your agency at no cost. You introduce the power of podcasting and Sweetfish services to your clients. Everybody wins. Learn more at sweetfishpartners.com.